Well, I very much hope not, and let's hope that it isn't from tonight onwards, but the fact is in the past it very much has been. In 2004, Channel 4 were due to do a documentary, to broadcast a documentary called On the Edge of the City. That also exposed this very story we're talking about tonight. The police asked Channel 4 not to show that documentary because the BNP was starting to talk about what they were boasting that it was going to be a great advert for the BNP. Because of that, all sorts of other people came in and said Channel 4 mustn't show this, they mustn't investigate this. Muslim leaders said they shouldn't be doing this. The fact is we can't sweep things under the carpet in Britain just because we don't like them.
I'd rather talk about 2010 than talk about something that was been going on in 2003. Actually, you should be commending the community, you should be commending me tonight on News Night for actually taking a position on this.
Absolutely, I do commend you for it. I was talking about the background of this, which I think is very important to look at. The fact is this case is very shocking to a lot of people because they didn't know this sort of thing was going on, because there has been a wall of silence around it. And I might just add that there is a demonstration of the seriousness of this problem and the unwillingness of people to attack it, to address it, by the very fact that one of your previous guests refers to the fact that his own stance in speaking out against sex gangs in Britain in 2010 is brave. Okay. It is brave. It shouldn't be. Okay, that demonstrates part of the problem.
It seems to be less brave now, though. I mean, there is a point about trying to talk about today rather than the past. Would you accept that we have become less politically correct, if you like, or at least that we seem to have gone past that to address this issue, to talk about it in these terms?
I'd very much hope so, but I mean, I think you can even hear in the way in which Jack Straw talked about it in your interview, and the way in which any politician, or indeed commentator, will talk about this, that people feel they are treading on eggshells. Modern Britain has all sorts of taboos, unspoken things that people don't want to get involved in case they're accused of all sorts of unpleasant things. And people, for that reason, people are very careful about addressing things like this. And I would hope that people can realize that this is the very beginning of addressing very unpleasant things that are going on, but they have to be more than addressed, they have to be dealt with.
Well, okay, but then what do you think they should actually do? Because this isn't just about political correctness. I mean, your suggestion is that it's actually making it harder to confront a horrific crime that we heard about in that piece. What is the next step from here?
Political correctness obviously makes it harder. It makes it harder for the police.
But what should they do now if we've got over that?
The thing they do now, among other things, is to do it, as Jack Straw mentioned, for the Pakistani communities of this country, Muslim communities in this country, and other communities, of course it isn't just them, to address this problem among their young men, of the way in which young girls are seen, because that is an endemic problem. It is one that has to be addressed. And I would argue it has to be addressed in the following way. As a Muslim friend of mine said in Birmingham recently, who said to me recently, she had spent all of her life being addressed as a Muslim woman and never as a British woman. Okay. That's the kind of rights that we should be talking about.
Mohammed Shafiq.
Well, you know what, I have to say Douglas is showing his true colours once again, suggesting it's endemic. It's not endemic. The vast majority of British Muslims, the vast majority of British Pakistanis find what's going on abhorrent. They find it evil.
Of course,
and the people I speak to on a daily basis have said just that. I mean, you rightly said there needs to be an honest and open debate. That's why I did a piece in the Times. That's why I welcome the national debate that we're having in this country. But I think we've got to be very careful in suggesting that something's endemic or is ingrained in these youngsters from an early age. What's ingrained from an early age is tolerance, respect, and these are basic values. And actually the criminals, and they should be treated like criminals, and not tarnished the whole community.
You don't think, Mohammed Shafiq, that there is a cultural issue to be confronted where there's a double standard in the way that men in the Pakistani community, many men, think about white girls relative to other Pakistani girls or girls of Pakistani origin?
Stephanie, I've already said that I think there is a perception amongst these criminal gangs. I'm not talking about the majority of the community, I'm talking about these criminal gangs. These people who've been convicted or are involved in grooming feel that their white girls are any less valuable, have less morals than their own daughters and sisters. And I've said that already, it's abhorrent, it's wrong, and we've got to do something about that. And that's why in the next few months I'll be going over to Holland to see what work they've done. They've successfully reduced their grooming amongst young Dutch girls, and see what lessons we can learn. But I honestly believe that this debate was about opening up this issue, opening the taboo topics, and we're having that debate within our Muslim community, the Pakistani community, and I hope that as we move forward to deal with this issue in a structured way, but in a way that respects diversity, respects tolerance, and doesn't throw accusations like Douglas is throwing around that it's endemic.
Okay, I'm afraid we're for what the judge called a reign of terror on young schoolgirls in the town. It's the latest in a number of prosecutions that are being held up as evidence that Asian gangs, specifically Pakistani men, represent a particular threat to young British girls today, which is not being confronted due to a misguided sense of political correctness. Jack Straw tells us British Pakistani men often see white girls as easy meat. Jackie Long has been looking at an issue rife with controversy and conflicting views.
They was calling her white trash. They was calling her a prostitute, saying she was nothing but like a dog.
There is a specific problem which involves Pakistani heritage men who target vulnerable young white girls.
It's not an ethnic-based problem. It's across the piece of the whole communities that there are in Blackburn.
Karen's daughter Jane was just 11 when she was befriended by an Asian man 10 years her senior. A friendship which began with gifts and rides in flash cars quickly turned into something very different.
It happened a month and a half ago after it started. She started going missing for 2 and 3 days on end, and then one day she came back, and I'll never forget. She came walking up the road and she was still drugged up, and she'd been taken to Manchester that night and then brought back the next morning.
Karen says Jane, who've changed both their names, had clearly been raped. Soon there were queues of different men coming to call.
A number of men in different cars at different times. They'd come during the night, they'd come during the day.
The family decided the only way to protect Jane was to move her abroad. But within weeks of coming back, the abuse started again.
I got a video sent to my phone. 3 Asian men assaulting my daughter. They were calling her white trash. They were calling her a prostitute, saying she was nothing but like a dog.
Hilary Wilmer is the chair of CROP, an organisation set up to help parents of sexually exploited children.
We've been working over the last 7, 8, 9 years with over 400 families, and of those families, mostly in the northwest and the northeast and the Midlands, but not entirely so. 96–97% of those 400 families are white. And in terms of the perpetrators, those gangs are in the vast majority from Pakistani Asian origin.
Others have recently pointed to a series of high-profile prosecutions of Muslim men as evidence. But there are no official statistics. Nevertheless, former Home Secretary and Blackburn MP Jack Straw says he knows from his own constituency that this is a real problem.
It is a specific problem in some areas, and it's been a specific problem here in the Blackburn area. Pakistanis, let's be clear, are not the only people who commit sexual offences, and overwhelmingly the sex offenders' wings of prisons are full of white sex offenders. But there is a specific problem which involves Pakistani heritage men, some of some age as well, who target vulnerable young white girls, and we need to get the Pakistani community to think much more clearly about why this is going on and to be more open about the problems that are leading to a number of Pakistani heritage men thinking that it's okay to target white girls in this way. These young men are in a Western society, in any event. They act like any other young men. They're fizzing and popping with testosterone. They want some outlet for that. But Pakistani heritage girls are off limits, and they are expected to marry a Pakistani girl from Pakistan, typically. So they then seek other avenues, and they see these young women, white girls who are vulnerable, some of them in care, who for sure have not been subject to normal parental support, who they think are easy meat. And then, because they're vulnerable, they ply them with gifts, they give them drugs, and then, of course, they're trapped.
This is such an explosive issue that for years any suggestion that race was a factor at all in the sexual exploitation of children was almost entirely denied. Now race is at the centre of the debate. But is that right? Or is it, as some are suggesting, a much more complex picture?
Well, that was Jackie Long. In a moment, we'll have a response to her report from Douglas Murray at the Centre for Social Cohesion and from Mohammed Shafiq, a Muslim community worker. But first, though, Helen Brayley was part of the only team that's carried out any kind of academic research into this. And in fact, the Times used your research earlier in the week when they were bigging up this story. Does your research show what others have claimed it shows?
I think the main problem with it is it's been taken out of context. We were looking at two police operations, both very close kind of geographically. And so based on that data, we did find that there was a large Pakistani contingent in the offenders and the victims were predominantly white. However, when you look at the census data and the demographic for that area, there were some Asian and black victims, and they were actually overrepresented when you look at the sheer percentages.
But if you talk about percentages, but we do know, even if it's a broader problem, that it's not just maybe in the Muslim community. It clearly is a problem in the Muslim community. I mean, you wouldn't deny that. We've seen this evidence in all these cases.
Yeah, I think the problem though is when you jump in with thinking about race too quickly, you can miss a whole load of other things that are happening in other areas. So by racially stereotyping this early on without a national scoping project, so we don't know what the situation is in other areas around the country, that you might be leading to a self-fulfilling prophecy of if people are looking for Asian offenders, they will only find Asian offenders, and offenders of other ethnic groups might develop a sense of impunity to this.
And that was a point in a way that came out in the film. But in a sense, I mean, what you're saying is that we can never know for sure. But, I mean, Mohammed Shafiq, you're someone who's actually taken quite a lot of risks in the past speaking up about this issue. Presumably you welcome Jack Straw's comments.
Well, I think it's important to say tonight that we pay tribute to the bravery of the women and the teenagers who give evidence, so that the perpetrators, the evil criminal men, are put behind for a very long time. And I think that's very important. But the central issue is this, that it's a sad reality that there are young Pakistani men, 53 in total of which we know, who've been convicted, who've been going around this country, who've been grooming white teenagers under the age of 16 in a horrific way. And I think it takes, it is time for the communities of the United Kingdom to stand up against this. This is not a race issue. It's got nothing to do with Islam. It's got nothing to do with the Muslim community. All it is the people who are born into Muslim households, who are involved in drugs, who are involved in crime, are carrying out these activities.
So when Jack Straw says that there is a sort of pervasive view among many Pakistani Muslim men that young English girls are easy meat and it's an outlet for their testosterone, you think that that's going too far?
Well, I think Jack Straw was very narrow in what he was actually saying. He didn't go into detail of his argument, so I would be reluctant to.
He's quite broad. He's saying that this is a view in that community.
He's far too broad.
Well,
but I think it's
so not easy meat. They're not considered to be easy meat.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said that in you referred to the Times commentary piece that I also was involved in. What I tried to set out was there is a perception that some of these young men do not see white girls as equal, as valuable, of high moral standing as they see their own daughters and their own sisters. And I think that's wrong. It's a form of racism that's abhorrent in a civilized society. And that's why I've taken the initiative 2 years ago to speak out against this. Against, as you said, so personal risk to me and my family. But I did that because I believe it's wrong. For as long as these people are carrying out these crimes, we've got to stand up. It's got nothing to do with race, it's got nothing to do with religion. They should be treated as criminals, and that's it.
Well, Douglas Murray, you've suggested that there was a conspiracy of silence around.
Well, just as Douglas Murray, said in the beginning, that this has to be investigated. You can't have political correctness about something like this. Whether you want to call them, if there's Asians that are committing them and they're doing it, it needs to be called out that there's Asian gangs that are sexually assaulting and molesting and hurting young women, whether they're white women or brown women or Hispanic women or Latino women or black women or whatever. It should be done. If you've got white gangs that are doing it, you need to be talking about that as well. If there were Japanese gangs or Chinese gangs or whatever it is, the political correctness has got to stop. The number one that situation that needs to be addressed is the safety of these girls. The other thing is that where these girls are living, and as the report was talking about, is that in many instances, these are coming from areas where the girls perhaps, broken families, single parent households, or maybe they've run away. And so now, the same thing that's happening, in any country, when you've got runaway girls, they don't have a family, what happens? They get exploited. They're, enticed into all sorts of things, that obviously, are going to lead them to the same situation that's occurring right now. And these men, they know exactly what they need to do. They ply them with gifts and money and very nice talk and, maybe, who knows, show them off in, nice fancy cars, take them to restaurants, literally just, these girls are looking for now that in no way, but the thing is that once they've got, their hooks in them, so to speak, well, now the exploitation becomes. And now when the girls want to get away or something happens and they're sexually assaulted or molested, they can't get away. They're trapped. And, this continues. So that's the problem with British society. They need to come to grips with this. And like they said, nobody in government wants to basically, at least from the reports that are out there, that it took, these types of news reports and newscasts to bring this thing up to, up to the public, purview, so the public could hear about it. And once the public heard about it and didn't realize this was going on, of course it's going to make dramatic news. And then on top of that, you have the thing where it's predominantly in this situation, it was men that were coming with a Muslim background that were either immigrants that have been here for some time, or perhaps they're British-born, Muslims living in those areas. And they're the ones, all right, that are utilizing, the same, methodology, criminality, drugs, prostitution, preying on these girls because they know that perhaps, nobody's looking out for them. Again, single family, broken homes, no father figure, easy to, entice, and go from there. Anyways, folks, we hope you enjoyed this video. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. And what you'd like to do is take a look at our other videos. They're above and below. The links are there. And you know what I've always said. When you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.